Welcome, dearest listener. Gather round the Gossington Hall fire with me. I'm your guide through the snow and the scandal, every clue crisp as frost, every twist sharp as a holly leaf. If you've ever suspected the sweetest traditions hide the bitterest betrayals, this is your tale. Subscribe now and never miss a chime of the village bell. New chapters arrive weekly, wrapped in mystery. Yours in suspense, the knitter of village secrets. 1 mince pie poisoned, 11 laced to kill, and a village snowed in on Christmas Eve. Miss Marple tastes arsenic in the currants and uncovers a recipe for murder. Welcome to Miss Marple and the Deadly Christmas Plot. 5 chapters of holly, havoc, and hidden heirs. Hit play. The 12th pie is about to spill its secret. Chapter 1. The Mince Pie. There wasn't snow fell in soft, deliberate curtains over St. Mary Mead, each flake a whispered secret settling on the thatched roofs and holly-wreathed gates. Miss Jane Marple stepped down from the pony trap outside Gossington Hall, her sensible boots crunching the virgin path, a wicker basket of knitted scarves swinging from her arm. The air carried the sharp tang of pine and the sweeter promise of mince pies baking within. Mrs. Bantry's annual pre-Christmas tea was a village institution, as fixed as the church calendar. The hall's front door stood ajar, exhaling warmth and the strains of "In the Bleak Midwinter" from a gramophone. Miss Marple paused on the threshold, noting the single set of footprints leading in, but none returning. Odd, but the milkman had called an hour ago. She brushed snow from her coat and entered. The drawing room buzzed with festive chaos. Paper chains looped like garlands of gossip, a Christmas tree twinkled with tinsel, and the WI ladies arranged trays of scones with military precision. Mrs. Dolly Bantry, plump, pink-cheeked, apron dusted with flour, waved from the doorway to the kitchen. "Jane, you're just in time. The mince pies are perfection, if I say so myself." Her laugh was a bell, but her eyes held a flicker of strain. Miss Marple smiled, setting her basket beside the fire. "I've brought scarves for the orphanage, and I'm longing for a taste of your currants." The kitchen was a steamy sanctuary of copper pans and cinnamon. Mrs. Bantry bustled to the Aga, lifting a tray of 12 golden pies, their lattice tops glistening. "The 12th is for the judge tomorrow, secret ingredient." She winked, then swayed, one hand clutching the counter. "Dolly." Miss Marple stepped forward. Mrs. Bantry's knees buckled. She crumpled beside the tray, face grey, lips flecked with foam. A gasp escaped, half sigh, half sob. The gramophone in the drawing room skipped, the carol warping into a minor wail. Miss Marple knelt, gloved fingers probing the pulse, thready, erratic. She sniffed the air. Almonds, bitter beneath the spice, arsenic. Her gaze fell on the pies. 11 intact, 1 missing its center. Currants, scattered like tiny black eyes. A scrap of paper protruded from Mrs. Bantry's apron pocket, ink smudged but legible. "The 12th pie hides the truth." "Fetch Dr. Haydock," she called to the nearest WI lady, voice calm as clotted cream. "And Constable Pork. No one touches the tray." Chaos erupted. Ladies fluttered like startled hens. The gramophone needle scratched to silence. Miss Marple lifted the note with tweezers fashioned from a hairpin. The handwriting was hurried, the paper torn from a recipe card. She turned it over, a faint smear of red, not jam, but blood, already browning. Dr. Haydock arrived breathless, medical bag slapping his thigh. He knelt, stethoscope cold against Mrs. Bantry's neck. "Poison, arsenic, I'd wager. She's alive, barely." He administered an emetic. Mrs. Bantry retched, currants staining the floor like confetti from a funeral. Constable Pork lumbered in, helmet askew. Murder, miss? Attempted, Miss Marple corrected. The pies were meant for the tea. Someone substituted the currants. She examined the tray. The missing pie's lattice was broken outward, as though scooped from within. A single currant lay on the counter, split to reveal a crystalline core, white, not black. Rat poison, refined for subtlety. Mrs. Bantry stirred, eyes fluttering. The 12th, she whispered. Recipe book. Miss Marple followed her gaze to a shelf above the aga. The book, leather-bound, pages swollen with clippings, lay open at mince pies extraordinaire. A page was torn, the stub jagged. She lifted the book. Beneath, a second note, folded small. You'll never win the contest. The prize is mine. The drawing-room door burst open. Miss Hartnell, WI treasurer, brandished a raffle ticket. Dolly's lottery win, 500, announced yesterday. Someone's jealous. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. The contest prize was $50 and a silver cup. $500 was life-changing. She returned to the kitchen. The footprints outside the scullery window, small, heeled, led to the coal shed, then vanished into the snow. A woman's tread. But the stride was long, purposeful. Dr. Haydock stood. She'll live. Stomach pump at the cottage hospital. But the pies must be analyzed. Miss Marple finished. She lifted the 12th pie with a spatula. Its center was intact, but the lattice bore a pinprick, injection site. The killer tested the dose here. The rest were for the village. Constable Polk sealed the kitchen with twine and a hasty sign. Police, keep out. The WI ladies hovered, whispering. Miss Marple noted their faces. Mrs. Price, whose bakery had lost to Dolly 3 years running. Mr. Clement, the postmaster, drowning in debt. Miss Weatherby, choir mistress, whose solo had been cut for Dolly's niece. She slipped the notes into her handbag beside the scarves. Outside, carolers gathered on the lawn, lanterns glowing, voices rising in Good King Wenceslas. Their light caught the kitchen window, illuminating a single currant on the sill. Split, crystalline, gleaming like a tiny star of death. Miss Marple stepped onto the terrace, breath clouding. The snow had covered the footprints, but memory preserved them. She smiled, small and wintry. The mince pie that wasn't had spoken, and the village's festive heart now beat with a darker rhythm. Tea would be served in 20 minutes. Plenty of time for the first lie to rise. Chapter 2. Tinsel and treachery snowflakes danced like mischievous sprites outside the village hall, each one catching the gas lamp glow before melting on the cobbles. Inside, the Christmas bazaar was in full, frantic swing. Stalls groaned under knitted tea cozies, jars of chutney, and hand-painted ornaments. Children darted between legs like minnows. The brass band wheezed through Hark, the herald angels sing, with more enthusiasm than tune. Miss Jane Marple slipped through the throng, her lavender cardigan a quiet beacon, eyes bright as a robin's behind her spectacles. The hall's centerpiece was the raffle table, draped in crimson velvet and crowned with Mrs. Bantry's silver cup, polished to a mirror. A sign proclaimed, "Win 500 lottery ticket, drawn tonight." The ticket stub book lay open, pages fluttering. Miss Marple noted the last entry. No. 4A7. D. Bantry. The ink was fresh, the handwriting hurried. She drifted to the bakery stall, where Mrs. Price, tall, angular, flour perpetually dusting her sleeves, arranged Eccles cakes with the precision of a quartermaster. Her smile was thin as phyllo pastry. Such a shock about Dolly, Miss Marple murmured, selecting a cake. Her mince pies were legendary. Mrs. Price's knife slipped, nicking the board. Legendary, overrated, currants from a tin. Her voice carried the bite of 3 consecutive losses at the county fair. Miss Marple's gaze fell on a torn raffle ticket beneath the stall. Stub 486, the counterpart to Dolly's. The tear was jagged, deliberate. She palmed it as Mrs. Price turned to a customer. Next, the post office booth. Mr. Clement, postmaster, counted stamps with trembling fingers, his waistcoat straining over a belly fed by unpaid bills. A ledger lay open. Overdue, 47, 3 wheeze, 60. His eyes darted to the raffle table like a starving man to a banquet. Expecting a windfall, Mr. Clement, Miss Marple asked softly. He started, stamps scattering. The lottery, Dolly's ticket. She bought it here yesterday. Insisted on 487. His laugh was hollow. Said it was her lucky number. Miss Marple moved on, the band striking up, "O come, all ye faithful." The choir stall was manned by Miss Weatherby, choir mistress, her bun tight as a drum. A hymn sheet lay crumpled beside her. The 12 days of Christmas, with partridge scratched out and mince pie scrawled in red ink. Dolly's niece took my solo, Miss Weatherby hissed to a friend. Now she'll take the cup. The nativity rehearsal began on the stage. Children in tea towel headdresses, a donkey borrowed from the farm. Miss Marple took a seat in the shadows, knitting, needles clicking. The angel, Dolly's niece, Clara, descended on wires, tinsel halo askew. As she reached the manger, the crown slipped, rolling to Miss Marple's feet. She lifted it. Inside the lining, a glass vial, empty, cork stopper missing. The label in Dolly's hand, vanilla essence. But the scent was almond, cyanide. Clara gasped. Aunt Dolly gave it to me, said it was for the king's beard oil. The lights dimmed for the star effect. In the brief darkness, a figure darted behind the backdrop, small, swift. Miss Marple followed, needles stilled. The corridor behind the stage smelled of damp and grease paint. A door stood ajar to the props room. Inside, chaos, shepherd's crooks, cardboard camels, a box labeled Angel Wings. On the floor, a second raffle ticket, stub 4A5, torn in half. Beside it, a recipe card, mince pies, secret ingredient, arsenic, trace. Miss Marple's breath caught. The card was in Mrs. Price's hand, the arsenic note added later in red. A prop crown lay nearby, its velvet lining slashed, matching the tear in Dolly's apron. Footsteps. Miss Weatherby burst in, eyes wild. "You, snooping." "Observing," Miss Marple corrected. "This crown, Clara's." The vial was planted to frame her. Miss Weatherby's hand flew to her throat. I found it in the choir robes, meant to tell the constable. After the rehearsal, Miss Marple finished, when suspicion had fermented. The lights flared back on. The audience applauded the angel's ascent. Miss Marple slipped the recipe card into her handbag beside the torn tickets. On stage, the wise men presented their gifts. One box, labeled gold, was open, frankincense spilling like pale sand. She returned to the hall. Mrs. Price was arguing with Mr. Clement over the raffle drum. The draw's rigged. Dolly bought 3 tickets, 4A7, 486, 485. Miss Marple approached, yet only 487 was entered. The others, torn, hidden. Someone wanted her to win. Mr. Clement paled. I sold them. She paid cash. The band struck up Jingle Bells. Miss Marple noted the drummer's sticks, one tipped with red paint, matching the ink on the hymn sheet. Miss Weatherby's nephew, the drummer, avoided her gaze. Constable Pork arrived, helmet dusted with snow. Dr. Haydock says Mrs. Bantry's rallying, wants her recipe book. Miss Marple handed him the props room findings. The 12th pie is key. Someone forged the lottery to ruin her or silence her. As the bazaar swirled on, Miss Marple stood by the Christmas tree, its fairy lights winking like conspirators. She lifted a bauble, watching the hall reflect in its curve. Mrs. Price's knife, Mr. Clement's ledger, Miss Weatherby's crumpled hymn. The tinsel glittered, but beneath it, treachery coiled like a serpent in the garland. The band played the final note. The lights dimmed for the raffle draw. Miss Marple smiled, small and serene. The second lie had been served with the Eccles cakes, and the village's festive mask was beginning to slip. Chapter 3. The holly and the ivy lie frost, edge delicate ferns across the church windows of St. Mary Mead, turning the stained glass into a kaleidoscope of muted jewel tones. Inside, the air was thick with beeswax and incense, the Advent candles flickering like watchful eyes. Miss Jane Marple slipped into the vestry after morning service, her hymn book clutched like a shield, the torn raffle tickets and cyanide vial tucked safely in her handbag. The congregation had dispersed for mulled wine in the hall. Only the verger's broom whispered across the flagstones. The vestry was a treasure trove of parish history. Ledgers bound in cracked leather, christening gowns yellowed with age, a brass plate commemorating the 1872 bell restoration. Miss Marple's fingers trailed the spines until she found the volume she sought. Charity Accounts, 1900, 1920. She opened it beneath the single gas lamp. The pages crackled like dry leaves. An entry in faded ink caught her eye. Deck 1918. Legacy of Miss Ivy Price, $500 to St. Mary's Orphanage, administered by Reverend Clement. Ivy Price, Mrs. Price's great-aunt, the village's wealthiest spinster, dead of influenza. But the signature below was not the Reverend's. It was Dolly Bantry's maiden name, D. Price, in a girlish hand. Miss Marple's pulse quickened. She turned to the baptismal register. Dolly Bantry, born 1895, illegitimate, mother listed as I. Price, spinster. The inheritance had been swapped. Dolly, the true heiress, Mrs. Price, the pretender. Footsteps on the stone. The Reverend Mr. Clement entered, cassock rustling, face pale beneath his clerical collar. Miss Marple, the vestry is closed. Yet open to secrets, she replied, closing the ledger. Ivy Price's will. The orphanage never received the $500. It funded Dolly's bakery instead. Mr. Clement's hands trembled. A clerical error, my grandfather. Corrected by forgery, Miss Marple said. Your grandfather, the postmaster then, altered the records. Mrs. Price discovered it last month. Threatened exposure. She produced the torn raffle ticket. Stub, $4.86. She bought the lottery tickets to ruin Dolly. The $500 prize was bait, but the poison was meant for the mince pies. The vestry door creaked. Mrs. Price stood there, coat unbuttoned, eyes blazing. You meddling old cat, Miss Marple remained serene. The hymnals in the choir loft, page 42 of the 12 days, the arsenic recipe inserted. Your handwriting, Mrs. Price, and the communion wine laced with belladonna, tested on the verger's cat, perhaps. Mrs. Price's laugh was brittle. Dolly stole my birthright. The bakery, the cup, the lottery, mine by right. She lunged for the ledger. Miss Marple stepped aside. Mrs. Price crashed into the font, water sloshing over the rim. The Reverend caught her arm. Enough! The police! A crash from the nave. Miss Weatherby's voice echoed. The holly wreath, it's fallen. Miss Marple hurried out. The Advent wreath lay on the floor, berries scattered like blood drops. Beneath it, a locket, gold, heart-shaped, engraved IP to DP, 1918. She opened it, a miniature of baby Dolly, and a lock of auburn hair, Mrs. Price's colour. Miss Weatherby knelt, face ashen. I found it in the choir robes, meant to return it anonymously. After framing Clara, Miss Marple said, The vial in the prop crown. You resented Dolly's niece. The church door slammed. Mr. Clement's nephew, the drummer, bolted through the snow. Miss Marple followed, shawl flying. The graveyard was a maze of leaning stones and yew trees, snow muffling her footsteps. She caught him at the lich gate, panting, a bundle of hymnals under his arm. "The belladonna," she said. "From your uncle's garden. You laced the wine to protect the family name." He dropped the hymnals. Pages fluttered open, each with a different poison recipe annotated in red. Aunt Dolly was kind, but Mrs. Price, she paid me to watch. Miss Marple gathered the pages. Blackmail, the lottery tickets, the forged will, the poisoned pies, all threads in a tapestry of envy. Back in the vestry, Constable Polk arrived, summoned by the verger. Mrs. Price sat handcuffed to the font, defiance crumbling. The inheritance was mine. Dolly laughed when I confronted her. Miss Marple opened the locket, the baby's face innocent. Laughter is not theft, but poison is murder. The church bells began to chime, noon clear and cold. Snow filtered through the belfry, dusting the altar like manna. Miss Marple slipped the locket into her pocket. The holly and ivy had lied, but the truth was now carved in stone. The village would gather for evensong, and the next lie would be served with the collection plate. Chapter 4. The Partridge in the Pear Tree. A Yuletide blizzard descended on St. Mary Mead like a vengeful angel, sealing lanes with drifts taller than a man and turning the village into a snow globe shaken by an unseen hand. By dusk, Gossington Hall's conservatory glowed like a lantern in the white waste, its glass panes fogged with the breath of potted pears and the heat of a dozen suspects. Miss Jane Marple had orchestrated a midnight gift exchange, ostensibly to lift spirits after Mrs. Bantry's ordeal, but truly to set her trap. Fairy lights twinkled amid the foliage. A gramophone spun the Coventry Carol in mournful counterpoint. The conservatory was a jungle of green, pear trees in tubs, their fruit wrapped in tissue like tiny presents. Ivy trailed from the rafters, a single partridge, stuffed, borrowed from the taxidermist, perched on a pedestal, glass eyes gleaming. Beneath it, a table held 12 beribboned parcels, one for each guest. Miss Marple stood at the centre, shawl draped like a magistrate's robe. "A game," she announced. "Each gift reveals a clue. The partridge watches all." Mrs. Price arrived first, wrist bandaged from the font, escorted by Constable Polk. Her glare could curdle milk. Mr. Clement followed, ledger clutched like a hymnal. Miss Weatherby hovered near the gramophone, fingers twitching. Clara, Dolly's niece, clung to a parcel wrapped in choir sheet music. The Reverend's nephew skulked by the door, snow melting from his boots. "Begin," Miss Marple said. Mrs. Price unwrapped her gift, a silver cup, the cup engraved St. Mary Mead Baking Champion 1934. Inside, a partridge feather, tipped with red ink. "Mine by right," she snarled. Mr. Clement's parcel contained a lottery ticket, stub 487, the winning number. "Forged," he whispered. "I printed it to trap Dolly." Miss Weatherby's gift was a hymn sheet, the 12 days, with 5 gold rings circled in blood red. "My solo," she hissed. Clara's parcel held the locket from the graveyard, now open to reveal a second photograph, Mrs. Price as a child beside Ivy Price. "Aunt Dolly kept it hidden," Clara said. The nephew's gift was a vial, belladonna, half full. He dropped it, glass shattered, scent sharp as betrayal. Miss Marple lifted the partridge. Its pedestal was hollow, inside a forged Christmas card. "To my true heir, 500 awaits. Burn after reading. Signed I. Price." But the ink was fresh. "The motive," she said. Mrs. Price believed the inheritance hers. She forged the card, the lottery, the will, but the partridge feather. She produced a second feather from her handbag, found in the coal shed. From the taxidermist bin, planted to frame Clara. The gramophone skipped, lights flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed the conservatory, a crash, a scream. When the emergency lantern flared, the trapdoor beneath the pear tree yawned open, snow swirling in. Mrs. Price teetered on the edge, caught by Pock. The tunnel, Miss Marple explained, from the conservatory to the old ice house, used to smuggle the poison. She descended the ladder, lantern raised. The tunnel was brick-lined, damp, ending at a wooden door. Beyond the ice house, shelves of rat poison, a baker's peel, a recipe book, dollies, pages annotated in Mrs. Price's hand. Arsenic dose, 1 grain per pie. Mrs. Price's voice echoed. She stole my life. Miss Marple emerged, book in hand. The 12th pie was injected here, the others laced in the kitchen, but the tunnel betrayed you. Footprints in flour, leading back to your bakery. Clara stepped forward. The Christmas card. I found it in Aunt Dolly's drawer. Mrs. Price sent it to lure her to the ice house. The lights returned. Fairy bulbs glowed, illuminating the suspects' faces. Mrs. Price defiant, Mr. Clement ashamed, Miss Weatherby weeping, the nephew cowed. Miss Marple closed the trapdoor. The partridge saw all. The pear tree hid the path. Tomorrow, on Christmas morning, the 12th pie will speak its final truth. Snow hissed against the glass. The gramophone resumed. The carol's lament, now a dirge. Miss Marple adjusted the partridge's feather, its red tip catching the light like a drop of blood. The blizzard raged, but the net was closing, and the village's darkest gift was nearly unwrapped. Chapter 5. The 12 Pies of Christmas. Christmas morning dawned in St. Mary Mead with a hush so profound it felt like the world held its breath. Sunlight, thin and golden, pierced the frost-laced windows of Gossington Hall's drawing room, gilding the Christmas tree in halos of light. The 12 mince pies, recovered, analyzed, and now arrayed on a silver tray beneath the twinkling branches, stood like sentinels of truth. Miss Jane Marple presided at the hearth, her lavender cardigan a quiet contrast to the room's festive splendor, her eyes bright as a star atop the tree. The village had gathered. Mrs. Bantry, pale but upright, propped in an armchair with a rug over her knees. Mrs. Price, wrist-cuffed, flanked by Constable Polk. Mr. Clement, ledger confiscated. Miss Weatherby, hymn sheet crumpled in her fist. Clara, clutching the locket. The Reverend's nephew, head bowed. Dr. Haydock stood by the door, medical bag in hand, ready to confirm the poison's pedigree. Miss Marple lifted the tray. The 12th pie, she began, voice soft as falling snow, was never meant to be eaten. It was the key. She sliced the pie with a silver knife. The lattice parted, revealing a hollow center filled not with mincemeat, but a rolled parchment. Dolly's true recipe, annotated in her hand. Currants soaked in brandy, no arsenic. Beneath, a second document, Ivy Price's original will, bequeathing $500 to Dolly, witnessed in 1918. Mrs. Price forged the lottery, the Christmas card, the hymnals, Miss Marple said. She believed the inheritance hers, stolen by Dolly's birth. But Ivy knew the truth. Dolly was her daughter. Mrs. Price's laugh was a shard of glass. She laughed when I begged for my share. Miss Marple produced the partridge feather from the ice house. You planted this to frame Clara. The tunnel carried the poison from your bakery to the hall. The raffle tickets, 486 and 485, were torn to hide your purchase of the winning stub. Mr. Clement spoke, voice cracking. I printed the ticket. She paid me to keep quiet about the forged will. Miss Weatherby sobbed. She promised me the solo if I slipped the cyanide vial into Clara's crown. The nephew added, she paid me to lace the communion wine, belladonna, to scare Dolly. Miss Marple turned to the tray. 11 pies remained, their centers intact but laced with arsenic, enough to kill the village. The 12th was your test. You injected it in the ice house, then substituted the tray. But Dolly tasted the brandy first. Her collapse saved us. She lifted the locket, opening it to reveal the photographs. Ivy's love for her daughter was her legacy. You twisted it into greed. Mrs. Price lunged, cuffs clinking. Palk restrained her. The cup, the money, it was mine. Miss Marple's gaze was steel. You poisoned the pies to claim a contest prize and silenced Dolly's claim. The lottery was a diversion. The true prize was the 500 hidden in the recipe book. Dr. Haydock stepped forward. Arsenic in 9 pies, trace in the 12th. Enough to fell a dozen. Clara placed the locket on the tray. Aunt Dolly wanted peace. She kept the will secret to protect the village. The Christmas tree lights flickered, casting shadows like dancing spectres. Miss Marple sliced the remaining pies, revealing their poison, crystalline grains glinting like malevolent sugar. She arranged the evidence on the mantel, the will, the locket, the feathers, the tickets, the recipe card. The 12 pies of Christmas, she said, each a verse in a hymn of envy. Mrs. Price composed the melody with accomplices for harmony, but the truth is a carol that cannot be silenced. Constable Polk snapped cuffs on Mr. Clement, Miss Weatherby, the nephew. Mrs. Price was led away. Her defiance melted into sobs. Mrs. Bantry rose, steady now, and embraced Clara. The bakery's yours, love, she said, and the cup. The church bells pealed, 9 clear notes, welcoming Christmas Day. Miss Marple accepted a scone from a WI lady, warm and fragrant. She stepped onto the terrace, snow crunching beneath her boots. The village lay peaceful, smoke curling from chimneys, carolers gathering anew. She opened her handbag, placing the locket beside her scarves. The 12th pie had spoken, its truth sweeter than brandy. The deadly plot was baked into memory, and St. Mary Mead's festive heart beat strong again. Miss Marple smiled, small and serene, and walked into the sunlight, the bells ringing her victory.